you're overwhelmed. Everything that is happening in your life, that just means the money, the relationships, and the career that you're trying to put out. And just when you look at your future, you just feel totally overwhelmed because you feel like you have not figured it out yet. And this is when you start be like, when I change or when this thing changes, then everything else will go through. And this is, it's like when I make more money, or when I make that X amount, then I feel the confidence. Or when I find the right relationship, then I kind of feel more fulfilled. However, this is what kind of keeps you getting stuck. It's not looking at the circumstances, it's trying to solve that just by looking at the circumstances. This is when you constantly look at your circumstances or your environment for answers, then this is the moment when you give your power away. And you stop asking, when is this thing going to change? And instead start asking, who am I choosing to be within this current experience that I'm experiencing right now? This is Elijah, and your circumstances don't have to completely take control of your power. And here we're gonna talk about how to allow the within in for answers instead of looking the outside for the validation. This is for the person who constantly look for their circumstances to change before they allow themselves to move forward or feel better. And that's maybe you who are struggling financially, or you are not in a particular type of relationship that you feel like you want, or maybe this feels like the career path that is not that what you thought it would be like. Or when you look at other people and then thinking, why are they there, and why am I not there yet? And suddenly this is when your circumstances becomes a reflection of your identity. Is when you think that you're having financial difficulties or struggles, and then this is when you start thinking, instead of thinking, hey, this is what I have, you start thinking, hey, I'm a failure. Or you start thinking that this relationship isn't working out the way I hope. You start thinking, hey, what is wrong with me? Or you think that, hey, instead of I'm still figuring out my direction, you start thinking I'm behind. And this is now your circumstances isn't just something you're experiencing. You just keep telling you who you think you are. So therefore, that's where the real problem begins. What does it actually mean to look inward? This does not mean that everything is and pretend to be everything that is okay. And it does not mean that sitting around all day thinking positive affirmations, or while your problems think that they'll solve themselves. It means that looking inward for direction instead of constantly looking outward for validation. Asking better question, like, what is actually in my control? What is making my situation, what is the situation actually means to me? And what can I actually learn from this? And this moment, what is it asking of me? And most importantly, what and who do I want to be in this specific situation? Your circumstances can give you information, and they can tell you some things that need to be changed. And that means that they can show you who you need to be in that matter. But however, they don't determine your identity. When you depend on your circumstances to change, then it almost feels like you'll always be waiting. Therefore, you say, when I'm happy, or I'm happy when, and or I'll be confident when, and or I feel successful when. It's like there's always another condition. However, the money, once you get that, then you feel like you're about to lose it. Or if the relationship, now you stepped in there and it feels like it might just end, or when you accomplish something, you immediately start looking for the next thing to accomplish yourself. Therefore, you never feel fulfilled, and you always constantly outsourcing your sense of self to the outcome and to the outside world. Viktor Frankl said that beautifully: when you are no longer able to change the situation, then you are forced and challenged to change ourselves. And I'm not saying that you don't want to change your circumstances. Absolutely, change that. Work toward that. That's what, it just provides a better life, because you get the better job, you build the business that you want, you leave the relationship that isn't necessarily healthy, and you improve your finances. And this is when you change your environment. Make your internal state completely dependent on whether things change or not. And this is when you access your power and you stop giving that to your circumstances. There are three parts that can partake into identifying that. And one is that identifying the facts, and that separates the circumstances from the story. So, for instance, when you say, my business isn't where I want it to be, now that's a fact. But when you think like, hey, I'm a failure, then that's the story. Or if you say, I'm single, now that's the circumstance. However, if you think that nobody wants me, then that's actually the story that you keep telling yourself. Or when you say, I'm struggling financially, that's a circumstance. However, when you think, I'm a failure, or I can never make money, then that's the story that you keep telling yourself. So it's important to split and what the circumstances is, and from it what the story is actually about, because that is significant, and that allows you to just separate the facts. Because sometimes the circumstances is not the one that is actually overwhelming you, it's the meaning that you're attaching to it. Number two, it's what you control. You can't control everything. You can't control what other people think or say, or you can't control the opportunities that are coming your way, or you can't control your past. However, you can control your next action. You can control your effort. You can control your attention, and you can control your habits and your boundaries and your willingness to keep going. And instead of doing it and spending all that energy into what you can control and what does not gets your attention, or honing for your attention, this is when you can reclaim your power. Number three, who are you choosing to be? And difficult circumstances gives you a choice. And when you become more reactive, you can either do that or become more grounded, or you can be more avoidant or more courageous, or you can just feel and become more helpless, or you can hone in on the responsibility. And it's when you're not saying that you don't choose everything that happens to you. You get to choose what you practice on becoming while that's happening. And that's huge, because you're not saying that your reality is not what shapes your identity, and what you build your identity on is that person that's gonna carry you through all of that. You can become more without feeling incomplete or acting like you are. And the thing is, whatever you're pursuing is not gonna fulfill what is totally there. And it all starts with you. And once you have that essence, then you can project that outwards. And the thing is, you can believe that you are incomplete, therefore then all things that what happens is your life is incomplete. And when you start thinking that you are whole and complete, then your circumstances, you don't give that power to your circumstances. Instead, it kind of reflects back from, because you think you're whole, then your whole life becomes more fulfilled. And this is when you don't pursue success, where you don't make it your identity, because you're already fulfilled, and the evidence that is gonna lie ahead is already gonna be present. So as long as you're paying attention to what are you telling yourself, pretty much. And the experience can be difficult, however you don't have to become the difficulty into that. So you're pretty much integrated, not as much integrated into it, into the problem. You're actually thinking more of being in yourself and thinking more of solutions, and that is self-leadership. Here's an idea you can take with you. You can look outward for information, and you can look inward for direction. And your circumstances can challenge you, they can frustrate you, and they can teach you. However, they can even tell you something that needs to change. However, they don't control your identity, and they don't have to determine your next move or step. And your circumstances are part of your life. However, they don't have to be the source of your power. And that is where your power begins. Well, next time you feel overwhelmed, what is happening around you? Pause and ask yourself 3 things. What are the facts? What does this actually mean? Or what am I making this mean? And what can I control? Now, who am I choosing to be right now? And these kind of questions kind of revolve and integrate into your life, and this is when something meaningful starts to begin.